morning, everybody. For those of you that are waiting, we're just waiting on Bunny. He's unfortunately stuck in a bit of traffic at the moment, so we'll get started soon as possible. Thanks all.
Good morning, everybody. My apologies for the delay. It's Gauteng weather, overcast, and whenever that happens, it's a bit of a tragedy on this side of the world. We're not used to, let alone wet weather, the overcast weather. So, folks, I do apologize, and the roads were absolutely horrific. So, my apologies. All right, folks, we're about to kick off with regards to the furniture renewal or restoration, at least. I just, while you're probably looking at me and watching me, I'm just going to get myself sorted out and just get a couple of quick things done here. Alrighty, that's that. All right, my phone is in silent, so that's a good thing. Oh, my coffee has arrived, which is extremely important, folks. Okay, if you haven't grabbed a cup of coffee yet, well, that's on you. Right, good. You're controlling the presentation. Eh? I just gave it to you on the memory stick. Oh, so there's the laptop. Okay, all right. I just put it up there. All right, okay, that's fine. Cool. Okay, folks, good morning to you. Welcome to Hardware Center, and the session we're going to do today is furniture restoration. Just to introduce myself, my name is Bunny Croucamp. I'm a carpenter, cabinet maker, woodworker based in Sebenza, Edenvale. I have my little workshop there where I work from, my little piece of heaven, and I wouldn't say so quiet because sometimes it does get a little bit noisy, but my little piece of heaven where I enjoy my trade, my woodworking. All right, so just on the slides presentation, I'm going to kind of talk through the slides, and then we will also have a discussion between the slide sessions as well. I suppose I'm off camera now. Eh? All right, okay, I need to get that positioned maybe a little bit closer. All right, okay, so brought to you by Hardware Center, your tool company of choice. Should pay me for that ad. All right, folks, we're going to have a look at furniture restoration. How do we go about it? Well, furniture restoration, let's just kind of look at this, is, it's fixing up something, restoring something. We've all got a little broken piece of furniture or a big piece of furniture tucked away somewhere in a corner in the back of a shed or something, and it's been bothering us, and we're supposed to be getting around to repairing it for probably the 10th, 11th, 12th year now. So maybe after this session, you might be enthused to go and tackle the job, and maybe with a bit more knowledge. So we're going to have a look at furniture restoration. So seriously, it's anything from a simple crack in a piece of furniture to a very complicated broken leg or something like that you may have, or replacement of veneers or whatever on a old piece of furniture, or antique piece of furniture. We're just going to go through it, have a chat with you, and then make it a little bit easier for you to sort of embark on that process, okay? All right, so just for this month, the workshops that we have, we're busy with the furniture restoration for today, and then the workshops run from 9 till 12:30, and then on the 25th of October, I'll be back again to do the router level 2 practical training with the guys, okay? So if you're ever interested in doing something like that, please have a look on the Hardware Center website. And you may want to just join up on the WhatsApp group or go and have a look at Facebook. The social media information is quite good. And just have a look and see what's being presented in terms of training and whatever. Okay. All right. So before we do anything, I think those of you that know me, I'm a bit of a safety nut. So far, everything's looking good. And let's just go through the PPE quickly. So not to spend too much time, but please, folks, eyes, something to protect your eyes, whatever your tool of choice is, or your specs of choice, but please, something to protect your eyes, not normal spectacles or glasses or whatever, okay? Unless they are the safety approved ones, by all means, then make use of those. Ear defenders or earplugs or whatever the case may be, those are important for you because of your hearing. And for most of us that are getting a little bit more mature in life, hearing becomes a bit of a problem. You all heard what I said. Hearing becomes a bit of a problem. So I would ask you, please, you will, get used to wearing ear defenders. And I mean, nowadays, ear defenders come with a whole range of features on them, from Bluetooth or a radio or whatever the case may be. So you can kind of listen to that while you're tinkering away in the shop. I'm not one for listening to music or podcasts or stuff like that in the shop. I put my ear defenders on, do the job, concentrate, and then get going again. All right. I do have a radio playing in the background all the time just to break the general noise. Okay, nose and lungs, folks. Seriously, this is an important one. Make sure that you do wear masks, dust masks, and so on. If you're busy turning or whatever the case may be, you might want to have a look at a more advanced sort of dust defense apparatus, such as a respirator or something like that. They're expensive, but I tell you what, it's much cheaper in the long term than having to have your lungs sorted out or treat cancers and whatever the case may be. Just to give you an indication, I was working with, I keep on suffering a little bit from a blocked nose, and I thought it was just general atmosphere and pollution and whatever the case may be. For the last couple of weeks, it cleared up, and then oddly enough, yesterday I was working with Oak, and it flared up again. So maybe I should take a dose of my own medicine and wear a little cheap mask. They generally do the trick. So definitely moving forward, I'll put that on. All right, feet, steel cap shoes, boots. Whilst you think, I keep on seeing guys with their flip-flops in the workshop and, open-toe shoes and whatever the case may be. I think at some point the odds are against you. Something's going to happen. I'm a firm believer in safety shoes. I mean, there's good safety shoes out there. You can get a Kevlar type cap. They don't let condensation form up in your shoes, so your feet don't get soggy and wet and uncomfortable and whatever the case may be. So I have a nice, comfortable pair of safety shoes that I can basically stand all day in them without being fatigued or feeling any pain or anything in my feet. So I urge you to kind of do the same thing if that's what you do. You stand there and spend a lot of time on your feet working in your shop. All right, and then, of course, gloves. I'm a little bit, I have a different opinion on gloves. I am not a keen fan of gloves. I think gloves have caused more problems in the workshop than without. Just bear in mind, and I'm going to make this comment, when you have a glove on your hand, if that glove gets snagged on a blade, whatever inside that glove goes into the blade. I think I'd rather deal with a little nick on my finger than the nick take place on the blade, on the glove, and then the glove gets pulled in. So I'd rather just avoid the gloves. Look, okay, so disposable gloves, obviously, yes. I mean, I use them quite often when I'm putting finishings or whatever on the furniture that I've repaired or worked with or whatever. Then I'll put gloves on, okay? Because there's nothing worse than having, stained fingers or nicotine-stained fingers, and everybody thinks you're a proper smoker. All right. The last one is aprons, leather or cloth. It's all up to you whether you want to work with an apron or not, and what type of work you're involved in. I generally don't wear one, but on the odd occasion, if I'm doing a lot of routing work, I'll wear, especially when it comes to hardwoods and stuff like that, then I will wear an apron. But otherwise, for the rest of it, no. But I think just pay attention to the main safety equipment, and that'll do you well, okay? All right, so let's just kick off, and we pose the question, what tools would you require to sort of embark on this furniture restoration journey? So I think some of you are probably thinking, you're going to buy 40, 50,000 rands worth of tools and equipment to go and make a 2,000 rand stool, So I don't quite think it's going to work like that. I'm going to take you through a list of basic things that you would need. You probably have some of them lying around in the shop, okay? All right, so just bear in mind that this is not an exhaustive list. As you go along, you will probably work out something that works nicely for you. I mean, I have a whole lot of tools that I work with, and some of them I'm quite comfortable with. Some of them I've picked up at flea markets and stuff like that, and just modified them slightly for use in the shop. And I think it goes the same for anybody else out there. My set of tools will differ from yours, but we can still meet the same objective in terms of restoring something. Just as a matter of interest, I just put this little thing up, and this is for the men or the boys out there. Please do have a look at that. Are you all right? All righty. Okay. You know how it goes. All right. Folks, okay. So let's just start off. We have to start off at a point. So let's just start off here, removing tools, okay? In other words, tools to remove staples, nails, broken screws, and stuff like that, okay? What do we basically need? Now, look, you don't have to go for exactly what's there. By the way, these are my tools, the ones that I have in my toolbox. So you'll have nail puller pliers. Okay, so it's these ones over here. What I would suggest is that you just grind the top down. I think the farriers used to use that type of tool when they were pulling the nails and then also cutting the horse's hooves. they would use something similar to that. This one has got a little bit of a V point on it, so you may want to just send it to somebody, or if you've got a grinder, just grind it so it's flush, so that when you are going to the surface to pull a nail out, you know that nail's only going to stick up about 2 or 3 millimeters. Then at least it goes flush onto the table and will be able to catch the nail. Okay. Then there's fencing pliers. It's these type of pliers. They're odd-looking toys, but the nice thing about them is that, I wouldn't say I bought it specifically for this reason, but it's got a nice little nifty cavity over here, or the area that you can catch a dowel with. Okay, so you can crimp it around the dowel, and then you can loosen the dowel off by moving it backwards and forwards. And especially if a little bit later I'll talk about the glue types. If you are working with hide glue, and if you're using hide glue, you just have to apply a bit of heat to it. It'll soften the glue off, and then you can actually pull that original dowel straight out of its socket and clean it up, and the possibilities of putting it back are pretty good. Otherwise, it's got a wire cutter on it, and there's a little bit of a spike thing to kind of get into, and a little pincer or plier up at the top of it. Okay, so that's quite handy. There's a specific tool for a staple remover. Now, it's not the little staple remover that you would use in your office, that little clamping little jobby. Yeah, I know, seriously, that's definitely not for furniture restoration. You need to get yourself something a little bit more sturdy. It's like this. It almost looks like a flat screwdriver. It's got a little bit of a curve in it, and then a little V cut out of it so that you can get in underneath the staple to then lift it up and then pull it out, or whatever the case may be. Okay. Another one that's very popular is the cat's claw. It's a little tool that looks like that. We call it a cat's claw because if you have a look down at the bottom, it gives you the image of something, a resemblance of a cat's claw. But that's very good for removing nails and so on, especially this one over here at the top. It's a similar design to that. You can then leverage it. You can put the claw underneath it and then leverage it, pull it over to get the nail out. Okay, and then of course the pry bar to remove nails, pry pieces apart and so on. So this is quite multifunctional, so more used to not so much for nails but to pry pieces apart. Okay, to kind of just get a wedge in somewhere and then open them up. All right, so these are all made out of metal, as you can see, but you need to be aware that they will always damage or hurt the surrounding wood that you're working with. So always remember to keep a couple of pieces of board, the thin 3 millimeter thick board, backing board. Maybe cut them into strips so you can put them down, or thicker pieces of wood or whatever, so you can use that as to assist you for leveraging, and then also to protect the furniture that you're working with. Okay. So other pliers that you may want to include are some of them that I've listed there. So that will be needle nose pliers, side cutters, diagonal pliers, for example, and so on. Okay. So those would come into play. Just one thing with the pliers. When you're working with it, please, watch how you work. Sometimes you don't realize how strong you are, and you close the pliers onto that nail, and as you close it, it cuts through the wire of the nail. Then obviously that's going to make things a little bit more complicated for you to do the extraction of that nail. Okay, so try and just measure your strength accordingly. Just test it, and slowly but surely does it. Okay, look. Going slowly in restoration is the name of the game. If you're going to start losing your temper and throwing things around and whatever the case may be, then I think rather just step out and go and get a cup of coffee and come back and then sit down and quietly recompose yourself and then get going again. I know some guys that are very good, but if things frustrate them, they're trying to get work done and something, a nail breaks or cracked or whatever, and then they start getting angry. They really start losing it. They lose control, and then they cause damage and stuff like that, which is a little bit more work at the end of the day. So just calm down. Rather just walk out and count to 10 or whatever you do to calm yourself down. That'll be the way to go. Okay. All right, then removing tool screw extractor. Now, I think most of us have gone through the throes of having a screw or a bolt that's broken on us. When we've done an assembly or whatever the case may be, and it's always typically the last bolt or the last screw that you put in, and the head snaps off, okay? And there you look at this and you think, oh, what the heck? All right, so there are tools that can remove those screws or the bolts, whatever the case may be. The mechanical guys or the motoring guys and all that, or the mechanics, they know these kind of tools. It's the easy outs, okay, as they call it. There's different variations of them, but this is the one set that I have. So like I said, they get the one you need, not the one you want. And that one is more than adequate for me. The only downside is, we're not mechanics, but you need to have a small set of tools in the shop that's going to assist you. So you'll need a small little shifting spanner or something just to get over the square head at the top and then remove it. Please don't put it into your drill or screwdriver or whatever. You're going to end up with a bigger bit of drama, okay? Read the instructions on the tin as to how to remove the bolt. Generally, what happens is you need to drill a fine little hole, a small little hole in the center of the broken screw or bolt, and then you put that in. It's got a left-hand thread, and when you're turning it out, it actually hooks in and pulls the thread out for you, okay? Quite handy to have. I mean, these things happen from time to time, all right? All right, so carbide scrapers, these are good to have, something that you really want to go and have a look at and invest in. Generally used, in my game to remove glue that's stuck in a corner or whatever the case may be, scrape the varnish off the top of a table. Advantages are these are carbide tipped, okay? And then obviously they come in different shaped tips. So this one in particular, I've just shown the triangular one, which makes sense. You can get nice and tight into a corner and then scrape whatever's in there and pull that out or scrape it out. You can get a semi-oval one. You can get square ones. So have a look around for the bits. You can use one handle. So basically the one handle fits all for the bits, okay? A little bit on the pricey side, but I mean, being carbide, they will last you a long time, okay? And then like in the triangle, there's 3 sides to it. So if you do happen to ruin the one side, rotate it and do the other side. But use the right tool for the right job. You don't want to go and mess up something that's fairly expensive on when there's a screw or a nut or something or something metal in the way that's going to damage that carbide tip. Make the effort of removing it properly before you start scraping, okay? So yes, they are long lasting, and yes, they are expensive. So for the local market, you may want to have a look on Amazon, .za, or you want to have a look on Takealot. I don't know if Hardware Center have these things. I've not seen them here, but that's where I picked mine up. Okay, so certainly you can have a look at it. This is particularly interesting for scraping. It's got a nice carbide blade on it. And then you've got a little bit of a knob that you can press down onto to apply a bit of pressure and then scrape and pull whatever the varnish is. So you know what? The reason is why you want to scrape this off the surface is you want to get that varnish off as much as you can. Because sandpaper is also starting to become a premium. I saw some sheets the other day sitting at 40 Rand a sheet of sandpaper, where we used to get these things a couple of years ago for like 5 Rand. Then I was sitting at 40 Rand a sheet. And with what it's like when you're taking varnish off, if you're going to hit it straight away with a 60 grit or an 80 grit sandpaper, it clogs up pretty quickly. So you're throwing away 40, 80, 120, 160 quickly before you even attempted to get that top cleared up. So the best way to do that is just a little bit of elbow grease, and then you can scrape most of that varnish off. And then it also gives you an opportunity to inspect the table while you're busy scraping it, so you can see where there's any little divots or whatever faults and flaws there are, And then once you've done that, then typically what would happen is, so I think maybe worth mentioning now is when you do scrape a tabletop to get the varnish off and you have done the inspection, obviously you've gone over a section, you'll see that there's a bit of varnish that's lying in a divot, and that will indicate to you that there's a dent in the table, okay? Well, it gives you an opportunity there and then to clean that dent out. I'll show you some of the other tools you can use for that. And then perhaps apply a bit of water, put a drop of water onto that spot, and then carry on cleaning up the rest of the table. Or you may want to just leave it and then come back and do the whole table and use a steam iron with a damp cloth to then steam out those divots so that the wood will, because a little dent or a divot, what it means is the wood got compressed. So the fibers are compressed. And all you want to do is just add a bit of water just to decompress the fibers again. Okay, and normally you're pretty successful. You get a good 99% success rate when you do that. Okay, so there's no need to go and put a filler or something like that on there. All right, fillers are one of the things you should really try and avoid when working in restoration, because that's just hiding what you're trying to fix. Okay, so all right, then you're probably looking at that tool at the end. There's a bit of an oddity. I use that if I have pieces that are really sad and broken, and I've got to get in there and it's been glued and whatever. So it's a sort of a chisel. It's like a chisel on the front part as well as on one of the sides. So almost like, I wouldn't say a knife, but it's pretty sharp. But it allows you to get in there and hack away and clean things up properly and get them tidied up before you do the restoration. Okay, so something worth having a look at. All right, another set of scrapers is this one. Stainless steel scrapers. I've seen them all over the world, I must be honest, and they are locally available. So there you can see the brand. It's I think it's Allway. They've got various types of tips. Okay, so you've basically got 12 different shapes on the tip, and you can see there's a round, there's a little bit of a flat square. There's a semi-round, and you can see the curves are slightly different. Here's something with a teardrop with a bigger point, and then the back part of it. So there's quite a number. So you've got 12 curves, if you want to call it that, that you can work with. And that should fit most of the furniture that you're busy trying to restore out there, okay? It should work easily enough for you. So they're made out of stainless steel, which is obviously not carbide, but nothing to stress about because, I mean, what are you busy cleaning up? You're basically cleaning the varnish off. So if you've got an OG on the side of a table, that's that fancy pattern that's on the side of a tabletop, and you want to get in there and clean the varnish out, please do that. Don't use a sander. Because when you start sanding that OG, then it's gone. There's no way you're going to put that back again. A professional woodworker will be able to put it back, but at a good price as well. Okay, we'll make some good money out of that job. How do we do it? I'm not going to tell you. You'll have to phone me. All right, so use these things. They get into those profiles. The shapes, they are perfect for those profiles. They'll clean that varnish out for you and then clean everything up, and then you can go and revarnish. Okay, so you've got different shape chips. They can be sharpened. If I remember, this one's got a little, in the back of the handle, it's got a little file that you can just use to quickly file the blade. And it's reasonably priced. If I'm not mistaken, I paid under 300 Rand for that set. And again, I think I got that one off Amazon today. So go and have a look and see if they've got something like that, okay? There might be a different brand one, but it's something worth getting. Right, now, for the folks that do know me, they know that I'm a card scraper fan. I really do enjoy them. Sometimes that scraper that I showed you, the carbide scraper 2 slides back, sometimes I may take the varnish off a tabletop with a scraper card before I attempt to do it with the actual scraper that I showed you earlier. So maybe a pack of scraper cards might be a better option. Right, so to remove the glue or varnish or whatever the case may be from the piece that you're working with, these profiles, you can get these profiles to work with. You can see there's a convex and concave profiles. You can see pretty much they standard sizes. Thank goodness we standardized in the woodworking carpentry game. We didn't make our sizes up as we went along. So everything kind of runs on imperial. You'll have 1/4 inch, 5/8 or 3/8 or 1/8 or whatever the case may be. So those profiles will match the profiles that you have on your furniture. So I think you can see this clearly. So there you can go into the little coves that you've got, and then on the beads that you may have, it'll fit perfectly over that. You can just run it down, scrape the varnish off, and maybe just give it a lick with a little bit of fine sandpaper, and then you can get the job done. So they come at different radiuses or radii and can be sharpened. Okay, a little bit of a trick to sharpen that, but I would ask you to go and have a look at, just give it a good Google or whatever, to get information on how to sharpen. It's not that difficult, okay? And then reasonably priced, okay? And I think they do have them here at Hardware Center. But again, shop around, okay? So you can find out where they're available. Okay, so these are the bigger card scrapers. When I say bigger, I would say that the width of this card scraper or cabinet scraper would be probably about 125 to 150 millimeters wide. So it's a fair size. That means you can get hold of it and work with it. So if you could use that as the sort of the measure and then do comparative. So there's a gooseneck, a semi-curved, and then the one with the radiuses on the side, and then the 2 flats. So those are also pretty handy. The gooseneck is extremely handy, especially when you have long pieces to work with. And once you know how to work with it on the inside of the gooseneck, you can manage most of the circular objects that you want to clean up and so on. Okay, so really nice to work with and comfortable. You've just got to practice a little bit. It's something worth investing a little bit of money in. And again, reasonably priced. I mean, you're looking probably in the region of about 300 to 350, 400 for a pack of those cards. And they can be sharpened again as well. Okay, so they will, once you buy a set of those, they basically should last you a lifetime. Unless you're really, really, really working a lot with it, then they'll last you half a lifetime. Okay, card scrapers. So these are miniature and card scrapers themselves. So there's 2 bigger ones. So just to show you what you can get. So instead of having it on that round disc where you had the radii, you can have it on a square card, maybe also just sharpen the front and the top of it. So you've got a sort of a dual purpose on that particular scraper. But these are miniature scrapers. Okay, so these little ones over here. Now I just put the ruler on there for scale, so you can get a pretty good idea. I mean, if you look at this one, I think it's only about 20, 25 millimeters wide from there to there. But these little toys, and they're flexible, proper, nice, and decent to hold. And these little guys can get in anywhere. This one in particular, good for scraping. And then also, if you're in a corner and there's glue or something, you're trying to get a little bit of glue out, you can actually sort of scrape forward with it and then scrape that glue patch out, okay? Because obviously, if there's glue stuck on your wood, then the finish goes over it. You can see clearly where the glue's been put, okay? So you want to manage that. All right, then there's also a little beading. So this is for the small beading. That'll go straight on top of it and you can scrape it. Then there's elliptical one. And then a small little miniature gooseneck. Okay, if you know how to work with a big gooseneck, that little one's going to be an absolute winner. So some of you may look at it and say, oh, this is a bit too complicated. But no, go and have a look at some of the books and stuff out there, and you'll see the guys are using these tools, and then, it might encourage you to have a look at it as well. All right. Okay, so card scrapers. These are the standard cards. Okay, these you can pick up in packs. You can get a pack of 4 of them for about, I think, again, 300, 400 Rand, or you can buy them loose. I know they sell at Hardware Center, they sell them for about 35 Rand a card. What I do is I have access to a water jet cutter. So sometimes I may get a profile where the guys have made up a cornice or something like that, where they've used a combination of router bits or OGs, okay? They've made a combination of them to come out with a particular pattern. Now, to try and clean that up is quite complicated. So if you can get a profile of, you get a little profiling tool, I think you may have seen it's like a comb, and you put it up against the cornice, for example, then you've got the image of the profile. So if you can map that out accurately, I send it off to the guys who've got a water jet cutter down the road from me, and then they'll cut the profile out on a blank card for me, and I can use that then to scrape down the profiles. Like, it's really worth the investment. So it may be a single use, but that's not going to hurt me or worry me, because I think at 35 Rand and a couple of bucks for cutting is going to save in the long run, because then I'm not damaging or removing any wood or anything. I'm actually removing the varnish or the thing that's causing the problem, okay? All right, so again, made out of toughened steel. You get them in different thicknesses, so they come anything from a 0.4 millimeter and go all the way up to about a 1.2 millimeter. I've actually got one that's a little bit thicker than that. Mine's closer to 3 millimeters, and new type. It's a fairly big scraper, probably about 250 millimeters wide, with curved ends and then a flat face, and it's thick. It's about 3 millimeters thick, and this thing is like, imagine, if you will, it's a cabinet scraper, the standing number 880, but in a handheld format. Okay, and this thing can chew away whatever, wood and varnish and whatever the case may be. The other thing is we also use these in furniture making. So you may want to use this if you're laminating a tabletop. Once you've got the top glued and you've followed the instructions on the tin, and it said to you wait 30 minutes after you've done the glue up, take a damp cloth and then scrape the sort of semi-dry wet glue off, instead of just leaving it there to dry overnight. So that when you come back the following morning, you take your scraper or your chisel or whatever, and you chisel it out, and then little chunks of wood come out on top of it, and then you're back to putting filler in again. So if you follow that procedure properly, then the following morning, all you do is you just take out the card scraper, and you can actually just scrape down those little sections between the laminations or the joints, and you can just tidy it up so that the table's now smooth and good to go. I mean, if you think, about 100 years ago or even more, there was no such thing as a random orbital sander. How do you think the guys would do the job? I mean, it's either done with a hand plane or with card scrapers. And please, the story that the guys tell me that they used glass, you know what? I think you guys are making it up. Go and have a beer. Okay. All right. So toughened steel, different thickness, can be sharpened, reasonably priced. Sharpening is a fairly easy process. It's one of the kind of the first things you learn when you do any sort of a fine woodworking course. They'll teach you how to sharpen up cabinet scrapers, card scrapers, chisels, and if you're working with hand planes, I'll show you how to work with that as well. So that's all part of the things you should learn as the basics of what you're working with, okay? All right, so there we go. Right, then the other tool that I came across, and I discovered this a little bit by mistake. It was something that I saw on one of the websites, was a universal scraper. Now, Ryder is a particular brand, a pretty good brand in the UK for chisels and hand planes and so on. They make some very good kit. I don't know. I don't think you can put it on par with the Veritas range of things, but they are comparable. They're pretty good tools, okay? So I saw this little uni scraper. So I thought, okay, let me grab one and see what it's all about. I read the hype on it on the little ad. And I thought, well, this is something to have a look at. And it was actually like a card scraper, but just a very flat one. And this thing is an absolute miracle, because the more you can flex it, it's actually quite flexible. The more you flex it, you can basically focus where you want to scrape on your furniture. So as you bend it, it focuses on a spot. And unless you bend it, it obviously does a bigger area, focuses it, bend it more, focuses it again, does a smaller area. So you can concentrate on certain parts. So while you can do it with a card scraper is a little bit more difficult to try and do that bend, but you can. You can also focus and pinpoint on where you want to fix things up or work. Okay, so made out of spring steel, flexible, can be sharpened, reasonably priced, scarce. I've seen Narix came out with one, a similar one. I saw Narix had one. I grabbed that, but I wasn't too impressed with the Narix one. It was a bit on the blunt side all the way around, so I had to sit and sharpen it up. And once it was sharpened up, it worked okay. It was comparable to. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same company that makes the thing. Okay, all right. But Narix is the other one that makes the universal scraper. One of the other advantages of using this universal scraper, because it's made out of spring steel, if you're trying to fix up something that's bowed or curved and you're trying to get clamps around it, if you put it on the inside of the curve and clamp it on either side, obviously it's going to bend. Gives you a better way to clamp and hold things in place so they don't move around if you use this little universal scraper. So it's also one of the other nice things that you can do with this toy. All right, so now we're going to the specialized scrapers. Yeah, and guys, yes, I know it's Festool, but hold on. Let me just explain this. So this tool is actually, it's a minute little piece of carbon or carbide steel. It's solid. So please, if you do buy one, don't drop it, because it'll chip. And then you're going to be a little bit of a sad person. When I say expensive, you're looking at probably about 1,500 Rand for one. Now there's two of them, and I'm going to just show you what they are, okay? These guys come out of the box extremely sharp. If you're not careful, you will cut yourself. Let me explain to you what this is and how it works. There's a rope or a string that's attached to this piece of carbide, okay? So call it the lanyard. What happens is it's used primarily in the motor industry. And what the guys will do is that when they've sprayed the car, sometimes what happens with the spray gun, it might pick up a little spot of spray and it creates a little blob. It spatters a blob onto the body. So rather than having to sand everything down and then respray, what they do is they take this little carbide scraper, lay it flat on that side, so it gets turned around on that side of the lanyard, or you could use the other ends of the lanyard. And as it lies flat, they just scrape the bump. And you go gently over it, and they scrape that bump, and then all they need to do is just polish that up, and you wouldn't even know that there was a bump there. So for us, this is an incredible little tool to work with, because you've just done your varnishing or whatever the case may be, or something you've done, and there's a little bump on the piece of furniture that you've worked on. You don't want to hit it with a sander, because I think you know the principles. If you put a flat random orbital, when it hits that bump, it goes over. What it does is where the bump is, it actually creates a little valley around the bump. So you actually got this happening before it flattens. So again, you may want to use a card scraper or a cabinet scraper. That may work, but then again, this is just one little dot on top of the table. And you want to just focus on that little section to do the repair work. Now remember, one of the things in terms of repair work is don't make it more complicated. Focus on the part that needs to be repaired. If somebody brings you something and it's a massive piece of furniture and it's got one little section that's got a small little crack in it, focus on the crack. Don't focus on trying to fix everything around the crack, because invariably that just makes a bigger problem and it's obvious where the repair job was done. Focus on where you are. So this takes everything and brings it into focus so you can sort out that particular area. The second one is actually quite interesting. And I have both of them. This one is actually quite an interesting one. This one's got a little radii on the bit, and it's a little bit thinner. What you do in that particular case is, if you see this, and it sounds crazy, but if you've got your, and I'm not saying if we do this, but some of us do get projects that we get from time to time, working with melamine, and then they put the edging on the melamine. Now, depending on the machines that your guy has got that does the edging for you, you've got to always, and I always suggest that you find somebody that does the edging properly for you. Otherwise, you end up having to try and sort the problems out. So generally what this does is, it's got a nice little radius on it that you can run on the edging just to round it off, because the guys that do the kitchen cupboards and stuff like that, the edges are pretty sharp and they're squared. And they may be flush and flat, and they may look okay, but that one puts a little radius on it. So you just run it down quickly, puts a nice little radius on there for you. You can also take it and do it on, maybe you're busy doing veneers, veneer board, chipboard, and you've put your edging on. You may just want to use that to round the edging off instead of having to take out a router or a sander or a block plane or something like that. That'll work pretty quickly. Please just watch the rules of following the grain, okay, when you do this. Otherwise, it can cause tear out. But these are two nice little tools to have in the shop. I know they're expensive, but they're worth their weight in gold. I mean, if you've said to somebody, all right, I can fix your table, and there's a little spot on the center of the table, you say, no, I can get it sorted out for you. I mean, you can varnish that little spot up, and then you can use, so with a little paintbrush, artist paintbrush, you fix that little spot up, use that tool when the varnish is dried off properly, that you can scrape it and level everything over, and then you can use your rubbing compound or cloths or whatever you're going to work with to then buff everything up and bring it back up to, nobody will even know there was a mark on that or spot on that particular part of the table. Like I said, fix and concentrate on the repair section only. Don't look at that little bump and say, oh no, I'm going to have to sand the whole table. There is no such thing. You can do focused and specific repairs. Okay, so that's what it boils down to. All right, so these are specialized, and I don't think that everybody's going to get this. These little scrapers, they are expensive, and but yes, if you are into this and you're serious about repair work, then it's something I would say add on to your tool set. Me or they? The? Okay. So you want me to want me more? Yeah. Okay. Oh, that'll be better as well. Then I don't have to step back into there. Can you still see me there? No. No. Don't focus on me. All right. Folks, okay, we're going to go on to the next part. Oh, that looks much better. Oh, that looks so much better. We're going to have a look at the next section, and that's clamps. All right, now look, forget about the story. You can never have enough clamps. Yes, you can. Trust me, I've been in the game long enough. You can have enough clamps. Okay, and in fact, you can have too many clamps, and they won't get used for many years, and that's a possibility. All right, clamps. So what you want to do is have a look at the clamps that I'm showing you. These are called the speed clamps. And they dual purpose. So whilst they can clamp, they can also spread. So what you want to do is, so that's the same clamp in clamping mode. Turn the heads around. There's a little button on there that you turn it around, and then you can get a spreader. Use that spreading motion to separate your furniture. Okay, so in particular when you're working with legs, or sorry, chairs and their legs, and you're trying to get the mortars and tenons apart, please don't hammer it with a hammer. You're going to end up with another broken problem. Like I said, focus on where the problem is. Don't try and make it a bigger problem, okay? So in that case, what happens is you put the spreaders in, and then generally speaking, a little bit of heat applied with a heat gun or a hairdryer. Please, we use a lot of things out of the house, but try at some point to get your own hairdryer. And why I'm saying a hairdryer is because you've got a little bit more control. It's not going to get that hot, okay? A heat gun can actually get hot to a point that it will burn the wood, and then you've got another set of problems on your hands, okay? But what you want to do is you want to heat up the area where the glue is, and principally most glues, they kind of will react. The PVC type glues, they will, and the PVA glues, they will soften slightly, might just give you that edge to get the parts separated, okay? All right, so that's the clamps that I would suggest that you get. And if you're looking for suggestions in terms of the lengths, I would say get a couple of, you need about 4 300mm lengths. And then if you can get yourself 600, because 500 is a sweet spot in woodworking. Everything is always 500 wide. So if you get a clamp that sits in that range, you're going to be just a little bit short. So you want to try and get something that goes a little bit 600 kind of range, okay? And a little bit over that wouldn't hurt either, because sometimes the bigger you go, the cheaper it gets. So even if you go to a 900, it may pay off in the long run, okay? But certainly get yourself some decent set of clamps, and you don't have to get an enormous a lot of them. There's spring clamps. You may want to get a handful of those. They're pretty cheap. They're about 80 to 100 Rand for a spring clamp. You may want to try and invest in those and so on. But as you go along, pick these things up and make a good investment in them, okay? Again, get what you need, not what you want. It's two different things. All right, now, probably one of the most amazing tools I picked up So I like my gadgets. I'm a proper gadget guy. I saw this tool that came up as a thread repair tool, and I bought it, and I thought, well, wherever would I use this? And well, as luck would have it, a couple of years ago, I was doing a restoration on a kist, and of course, all the brass parts were with nuts, and the brass itself, they were put together and so on. But the threads were pretty sad. So this is a thread repair tool. Okay, so you get it in metric threads and imperial threads. Okay, and this particular one does, if I remember, does both of them, because that's the one I've got. And it's very simple to work with. Okay, put it on, and you just spin it through the threads, and it cleans the threads up and ties them up nicely, and the bolts can go back. Then, of course, if the bolts happen to be a little bit on the loosey side, you've got solutions like Loctite and stuff like that that have got fillers in their products. You can then put that onto the thread, and then you can lock it in. Okay, that means you can still take it apart at a later stage. Just a little bit of power required to open it up, but definitely a must-have tool. It's something where I can't even remember where I got this one, but please, you can just search for thread repair tool. I'm certain they've got something like this out here. It wouldn't be unique to other parts of the world. Okay. All right, then the next one is to have a look at rasp or wood files. The reason why I've listed that is it's for many, many reasons. In the first instance, I've said that to remove glue from tenons and dowels or repair damaged pieces. Okay. And it's rather vague, but the particular rasp that I've shown you is a Shinto rasp. Now, if anybody's seen these, you'll know that they're very good rasps to work with. I generally hardly even use the Stanley Sureform, and I have a good collection of all the different shapes and sizes. And then the microplane, so just hold fire. The microplane was invented for woodworking. It was the kitchen and the culinary people that took the microplane from the woodworkers because they used it for zesting, believe it or not. That's how it came about. So the microplane for the kitchen costs about 6 times more than the microplane for the woodworkers, but it's exactly the same thing. Okay. I wouldn't rush into getting a microplane, to be quite honest. I've blunted, same as the Sureform. I bought all the different microplane variants and types. They are nice. I must say they're really nice to work with, but they blunt so quickly. And then it's just really, that investment, they're expensive. That investment just wasn't worth it, okay? The Sureform, I think most of you should know the Stanley Sureform. We grew up with them, and if you didn't grow up with them, it's a sad day for you, because it's something, if you really know how to work with a Stanley Sureform, you can carve and do a whole lot of things with it, okay, if you can really get good at it. Bit of practice. It's pretty intuitive how to work with it. You've got all the different shapes. You get short ones, you get wider ones, you get circular ones, small ones, long ones, circular, or round at least, as rasps, and they are really good. And the nice thing is that the blades are always available. Okay, there were some copies and clones that were made at one stage, which are all equally good. I've started collecting all the different ones that have been out there over the years. So people are throwing them out of their garages. I kind of grab it and just put it into a display. And there's been some really interesting ones. Okay, but Stanley's the leader in that. But the Shinto rasp, I want to come back to this. Again, a gadget that I saw, I had a look at, and I thought, well, this might work. Very strange looking tool. It comes in 2 variations. You get the one this is the one that I have, and then there's another one that's got like a bit of a handle on the front of it, so that you've got a handle to hold onto, and then you've got the back handle, so to guide. But I just felt that I'm so used to working with a normal rasp, I should be fine with that. What's different about this is you can see there's like a cross design on it, but when you look at the profile, it looks like hacksaw blades that have been joined together. And I think that is the only rasp that has lasted the longest in my shop. In fact, I bought a second one as a backup to that one a couple of years ago, just in case I lose that or it goes blunt on me. And it still to this day hasn't gone blunt on me. So it's a Shinto rasp. If you're looking for something that's going to last you and a good value for money, it's going to be that toy. I'm not trying to market anything. I'm just saying to you, it's the one that I found was just one of the most amazing rasps that you could work with. Okay, there may be others out there, and there are definitely others. I've tried variations, but this is the one. So this is my go-to, but I do have these guys if I do need it for something awkward or strange shape or whatever the case may be. Okay. All right. So have a look at that. Okay. All right. Then carving tool set. You just want to get yourself a reasonably cheap carving tool set. Why? Because you get some awkward areas that you've got to get into. You may need to clean something out, or you've put filler in and you can't reach into there. Or you may need to take a piece of wood and carve it with a little bit of a shape or something on it, or a little bit of a pattern to pick up and follow into the rest of the pattern. Then this is what you need. And these little toys are reasonably okay, reasonably priced. If you make yourself a nice little sharpener with a strop, it's going to last you a lifetime, okay? Over the years, I've collected guys that actually did carving. It was a guy sold his whole carving set collection. I mean, he even made up a little chisel on a big ballpoint pen, the yellow one, that he inserted this little piece of hardened steel that was made into a chisel. So it's minute. It's probably about 2 millimeters wide. And you think, well, what? But the guy did very fine work. But so if you can imagine, he had from that to really big chisels and rasps and stuff like that. He even had little riflers and whatever, or rifflers at least. It was a bargain to buy that. I think I paid a couple of bucks for it, but it had so many different chisels and rasps and shapes and sizes and whatever, and gouges and whatever. I'll never be short on anything that I need. So, but for yourselves, if you're starting off, you want to get yourself a little kit like that, and it'll be more than adequate. Okay, who knows? Maybe you might gravitate more towards that and forget about the furniture restoration. Okay. All right, so there's the carving tool set. And again, also reasonably priced. If you ask me what the price is, I can't tell you, but I know it wasn't something that robbed the bank, okay? All right, so then the other toy that you want to look at, and this is something that also comes into play quite well, is pick hooks and rotary rasps. Okay, so if you have a look at this one over here, look, you get pick hooks and you get pick hooks, okay? So this particular set over here will work. I mean, this is my backup set again. If I happen to lose one, I will grab one of those if I ever need to. And I don't think I've ever used one. The blister pack still seems to be intact. I've got a good set, and they're fairly strong, and they work for me. You can see the different hooks on it now. You're saying, okay, what do you do with that? Well, say you're putting down a piece of veneer, and you need to control it. Things like a tweezer might be a little bit awkward. So, these little things, you can just grab it and then move it around and locate and position it properly onto the thing that you're working with, that you're restoring. Yesterday, I had a fix up on a wrapped door, just as a hint for you guys on those wrapped doors that you have in the kitchen. When that wrap starts coming loose on the edges, get yourself a medium thick CA glue, and then pull it back. And then when you pull it back, you obviously don't want to put your fingers there. Then this little one with the point is ideal, because you just get it in there, put your nozzle for the glue at the back of it, and then you can use the little pick to keep the laminate off from the board. And you just run it down, like I said, closes up behind, and then just get a nice strip of wood. Please, melamine wood, okay, or something with plastic, because you don't want that CA to lock on you. And then you can close it up, and then that's the door fixed. So you don't have to go and pay. I mean, I got a quote to do one door, and the door was 800 by 400. The guy said to me 2,400. I said, you're crazy. I said, the board of MDF 16 mils is going to cost me about 13, 1400. Why do I? No, it's the foil and that just to get the one door. So let's hopefully say that I've saved you some money there. Okay, so that little pick set, I think that's probably about 200 or 300 rand for that, available anywhere at any of the hardware guys. Then one more other thing that's very useful is this little rotary rasp that you fit into your drill. Again, I would invest in a really good set. Okay, I wouldn't just go and buy an El Cheapo and do the job. That's going to save you. So let me give you an idea. For the most part, mortise and tenons on chairs are generally 9 to 10 millimeters in size. Okay, so that means this little toy here, or these ones, the diameter is no more than 10 millimeter diameter. So that means when you've taken the leg apart and you've given it a little bit of a lick of sandpaper to get the glue off, because you want to re-glue it again, and now you need to get the glue out of that mortise, then that rasp is big enough to get in there. You can run it up and down with your drill just to clear it. Look, you're not going to get 100% of the glue out of there, but you'll get most of it out and enough surface to make contact with on the raw wood so you can get this thing glued back together again, okay? And again, just a hint in terms of mortise and tenon repair. If things are complicated, you may want to just go and have a look and see if you can get some veneer. Veneers are pretty thin, so you can actually glue the veneers on to help you to then just bulk up to get your mortise back. Or you can use dowels where the mortise was on the chair, put dowels through it, put 2 dowels through that mortise through the chair to hold the chair solid, so it stops it from racking. Okay. Once the chair started racking, you've really got to do a little bit of work to get it fixed up. Okay, so just a small little hint for you, but these are definitely toys that are going to help you out. I mean, the rasp they'll always help you out. Okay, you'll need them from time to time. There's different shapes and sizes. So the one you would use for the mortise would either be that one or the one down at the bottom. Either one of those two will do the trick for you. Okay, so it'll clear it up nicely. Okay, alrighty. Right, foursome bits. Okay, so this is this is a must-have. Okay, but the problem is that this can either be extremely cheap. So I'm not a Temu fan. I've never bought from them. I know Temu have got these things on their website. You can pick a complete set. So you can go from 10 millimeters all the way up to, this is my set. It's not a Temu set, I must say. From 10 millimeter, I think mine goes all the way up to 54, if I remember, 54 millimeter diameter. So, yeah, something really worth having because they do nice clean cuts and they work well for you and they just do the job. Okay, so 10 millimeters is the most used to remove. Again, you can also use glue, remove glue from your mortise and dowel holes. A good set requires financing, okay, please, because a good set is not going to come cheaply, all right? So have a look at that. Just again, so we were talking about the rasps to remove that glue. Just one of the things you need to do is, please, you need to work fairly quickly because, like I said to you, if you apply any heat to the glue softens. So what it does is it starts clogging up those rasps, so they start getting packed up with the glue. There is a way to remove it. You can either soak it in a clean green would typically do the job for you to remove it. But what I would suggest is that you have a small steel brush on hand to clear those, to clear that glue out as quickly as possible. And then don't go against the teeth on the rasp. Go with the teeth, okay, so that it's going to keep it easier for you to get them cleaned, okay. Again, the glue will also attach to these. It's the other way around. Once it's dried and it's cooled down and it's dry, then it basically cracks off, okay. So that's not a major problem. But maybe one more hint for you. A set of good drills will also come in handy, and I never added that to the collection. I think I just made an assumption everybody would know that they would have to have drills. But if you use a drill and put it in reverse mode, okay, you can also use that, a 10 millimeter drill, to try and clear out the glue in your mortise, okay? But put it in reverse, folks, not forward. Otherwise, your own set of chaoses will occur, all right? Put it in reverse and then use that to clean out the mortise. All right, okay. Then to fix things up, okay, so the other school of arguments may start coming into play. It's something that you need to kind of work with and deal with. So generally speaking, this is pretty much my go-to. It's epoxy bond 2-part, and it sets in 2 hours, okay? So something that I found that works quite well for what I want to do. Read the specification. Or the technical data sheet, the TDS. Read it, understand it, see what you can do with it and how you can work with it. It's really good stuff. I'm very comfortable to work with this. I normally buy a pack from Alkaline directly, and I go through that probably one tub in a month. Okay, so it's the hardener with the epoxy. And it sets in 2 hours, and maybe I can also just give you a little hint. When you've cleaned up the overflow epoxy, have a piece of newspaper nearby. Put that epoxy onto the newspaper, leave it there while everything's clamped up overnight. When you come back in the morning, make sure that you check that the epoxy on the newspaper has set. Because if it hasn't set, then you know what's happened inside the joint. Okay, then you're back to the drawing board. Does that make sense to you? So please try and bear that one in mind. Easy little hint. All you're going to do is just scrape the excess onto a piece of newspaper, walk away. Come back tomorrow. If it's nice and hard and solid, then you know it's set inside the joint. Okay. Then there's another thing. They say use wood flour to bulk up the material. Okay, wood flour is the technical word for man glitter, which is the made-up name for sawdust. Okay, so if you add a little bit of sawdust, typically just to try and color the wood that you're trying to fill it into, you can then put in some wood flour. Now, the wood flour will help you. Please, guys, this is not a gap filler. Okay, no glue is a gap filler. I know that some of the companies are saying, yes, their glues are gap fillers and stuff like that. All right, okay. Go and do a little bit of homework on glues and glue types, and you'll find that it's not really a gap filler. So the guys out there are probably going to say that the epoxy is also not a good thing, because once it gets hard, it's almost like glass. It can shatter and whatever the case may be. But for the most part, I mean, the guys that I learned to do repair work, restoration work from, all use epoxies, and they're quite comfortable with working with it. They know, they've shown me how to look at it. As long as you follow what I've said to you, make sure that you've got some wood to adhere to, so something you can stick. So you want to get something that can attach to the lignin, so that everything can bond and close up and tighten up. And especially on a chair, if the chair's mortise and tenon has failed at the back, it's normally where it does fail, because that's where the most high compressive and stresses are. You want to reinforce that mortise and tenon at the back of it. Okay, so typically what I do is I put a through dowel onto that mortise and tenon. Okay, and then you can tidy it up and it looks nice. You can get a little staining kit. I'll talk about that later. And you can stain that little patch up, and then just get your artist brush, put a little bit of lacquer or shellac or whatever over it, and it looks perfectly. Okay, it looks perfect. You might just see a little shadow line of a dowel, but that will last you a long time. Okay, until maybe some heavyweight gets on there and breaks it again. Okay, just remember now, we're living in a different time. So the chairs they made back then hardly support the people that we have today. Okay, so that's why I think we have so many chair repairs, and I see probably a good 12 to 24 chairs a month come through my shop. Okay, so please, I'm not just a chair repair guy, just that's what comes through. They're quick. Once you know how to do it, they're quick to fix and quick to repair. Okay, but do test and experiment. Maybe go to those second-hand furniture shops, and if they've got a rickety old piece of pine chair that's all broken and busted, offer the guy a couple of bucks for it, take it, go back, and then repair it. Try the techniques out and see how it works out for you. What I do want to say at this juncture, do not put anything metal into what you're trying to repair. Okay? The metal, all that's going to happen is the metal is going to cause compression of the fibers around the metal. It'll loosen off, and over time it will fail again. Okay? So you really want to put wood with wood. You don't want to put any metal in there. Don't come and put in coach bolts or fasteners or bolts or whatever the case may be, nails or whatever. These things are not going to work for you. Okay? To do a proper repair, it's wood to wood. Okay? So please bear that in mind. All right. So last thing, can be sanded, filled, and tinted. And then please be patient. At least 2 hours. I mean, come on, how much faster do you want this to go? I know, 10 minutes. That's what I want. Maybe one day I'll make an epoxy like the CA glues that you can just spray and it's done. Okay? All right, so adhesives in general. All right, so pick your fight. Okay? There's a number of adhesives that you can work with. So I've just shown you the Alkaline Ultra Pro. And then you got the Type-On hide glue, and then the original wood glue, and then just a Galmar type glue, like your carpenter's glue. And they're all good. They all work, but you want to get something that's fit for purpose. Okay, so generally speaking, on a table, you want to use something proper. So something that's maybe waterproof, and that'll be the Ultra glue from Alkaline. The Pro is good for chairs. It's designed for that. It's very good for chairs. It also dries with a bit of a dark line as well, so it's not that obvious after you've done the glue up. But you want to have a look at things like waterproof glues, glues that have got zero creep. And what do we mean by zero creep? When you've glued something, it doesn't squeeze out that glue over a period of time and creates a little ridge or a bump on the table or the whatever. So you want to try and avoid that. You can also get clear glue lines. So in other words, these glues like the Galmar glues, they dry with a clear line. Okay, so it dries clear. Again, test this stuff. If you put the excess on a piece of newspaper, come back the following day, you'll see it's clear. And that should be the same result on your wood. You've also got hide glue. This is not glue that sneaks away and doesn't let you see where it is. This is hide glue, as in animal hide. Okay, so that is actually the glue that they used way back when. It's a protein type glue. Okay. I always kind of imagine, how did they ever discover this? It must have been some guy sitting around a fire, and they've probably just finished their hunt and they've eaten and whatever the case may be, and they've got a wooden spoon or two wooden spoons. And the following morning they wake up and the two wooden spoons are stuck together, and they say, oh, look at this. And then they put it next to the fire. They started a new fire for breakfast, and they put the stuff next to the fire, and then suddenly they picked it up and the two things fell apart again. And they kind of said, oh, this is clever. And then they joined it and it cooled down and it stayed together, and then they put it near the fire and they heated it up and it came apart. So maybe the story went like that. I don't know. It could have gone another way. But hide glue is always a winner. So whenever you're working with antique furniture, and you know your furniture and you know the period of the furniture, you can determine what type of glue was used, because the modern glues as we have it today, were maybe invented and discovered in the 1920s, but only went commercial in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Okay. So it means for the most part, hide glue was the common glue. So it could be hide glue as a protein glue, or it could have been fish glue, which is also a protein glue. Okay. It could have been either one of the two. And the advantage is that if it was that period, it's way back in the 1920s, for example, even earlier, you can apply heat to it and it'll actually become soft and sticky and you can actually pull it apart. Okay. Do the repair work and then use hide glue again. So Titebond have actually got a hide glue that you can work with that works. I don't know how they keep it in a liquid. It's not going to last forever in the bottle. It'll expire after a period of time. But they've got their hide glue and it works quite well. I mean, I've used the stuff and I'm happy with it. But you can also get your own hide glue. It comes in a pack of little beads. They call them pearls. And you put it into a little water heated pot. And then you can melt the beads and then you can use that as glue. So if you go into a proper carpenter or cabinetry shop and the guys know what they're doing, you'll always see this little pot. The first thing they do is when they walk past, somebody will switch it on and it stays on for the day and it's got this horrid little stick in it where the glue. So the guys will pick the pot up, go to their workbench, put the glue on, assemble the whole thing. And once it's cooled down and that's a few minutes or maybe half an hour later, that's it, it's stuck. So it's actually one of the best glues to work with. And so, you're looking at 24 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours. And there you're looking at maybe 2 hours top and it's done. So, the old stuff still works. And I've got both fish glue and hide glue because it depends on the repair job that I've got to work with. Okay. And then the PVA or the PVC type glues, there's PVAs. For the most part, the new glues are polyvinyl acrylates. Okay. They sort of a form of rubber plastic. Okay. That you can work with. All right. They dries and they water based and they've waterproof and all this kind of stuff. But pick your fight with your glue. Okay. And make it easier on yourself. So, yes, in my shop, I have a combination of glues for different tasks and different jobs. Okay. All right. So, one of the other adhesives that's come into play, which is a relatively nice one to work with. And, if you know how to do this properly, it will certainly save you a lot of time. But it's not something you should rely on. Okay. So, first of all, what I want to say is the cyanoacrylate glues are not intended for heavy-duty work. Okay. Under no circumstances. It's extremely brittle and it'll snap or crack very easily if you try and put it on parts that move around or heavy parts or big parts. So structural parts, heavy stress parts or light stress parts, this is definitely not the way to go. This is intended for small fixes that you want to make. So when you need to glue up small parts or fill in small cracks or voids. So maybe on a piece of furniture, there's a bit of a crack or check that started coming in onto the top. You may want to clean that up. And in order to fix it up, you can maybe make use of the black CA glue, which comes in a thick. So they come in different thicknesses now. So you get a thin, you'll get a medium and a thick and clear. And now there's the black thick. And I know they're working on a brown one at the moment. So we're looking forward to seeing that. Maybe it might even be out at the moment. But we're looking forward to getting a hold of that. But these are intended to fill up gaps and little whatever problems that you have. So, for example, if I have a tabletop, maybe a new one that I've made, and there might be a knot or two on the tabletop, and it's got a little bit of a mark or a little dent or little thing around the knot itself, then I will fill it up with the black. So almost, instead of using epoxy or something like that, it's easier just to do that. And if you're in a hurry, you've got to get that out of the door, then you can get the accelerator. So you can just spray it quickly, and it'll then harden up and dry. And you can take your card scraper, scrape the top of it off, and buff it up, put your finish on, and then off it goes. Okay, so a nice quick way to get things done. But be careful, does not always work for joining. So I think some of you that have tried CA glue, try and maybe a little splinter that came off on a piece of wood, and you try to glue that back, and that splinter didn't stay stuck. There are some cases where the glue doesn't work, okay? So please just be aware of that. So sometimes just the normal glue is what you should have done. But you know what? Time is money, and we want to go the quick route, so this is what we'll end up doing, okay? All right, so really good to have. I use it all the time, plus the accelerator. And just so worth mentioning, Galmar have got, not as an advertising shot, but Galmar have got I think it's a 50 mil CA glue with the accelerator in the tin for 50 Rand for the two. It's really, really good value for money, okay? So just, have a look around. These ones, for example, these are expensive. For the 50 grams of this, I think it was about 300 Rand for one bottle, okay? But CA glue is generally kind of CA glue. Not always, but I don't buy them from the street vendors, okay? That stuff is definitely not what you want, okay? The one that you can also use is, I think it's that Magic Wood from GenChem. They've got that very thin one, the Magic Wood. So that's quite nice because when you put that on, it just runs and creeps and soaks over everything. So generally when I have a hole or something that I want to close up, I normally pour that in so I can create a initial barrier, and then I put the thick one in. So because the thick one tends to slowly seep into the wood, but that'll act as a barrier because it dries up quickly, and then you put your other glue on top of it. Okay, so CA glues will weld onto other CA glues. Okay, right, paint stripper. So there's another tool that you want to have in your toolkit. I'm not a great fan of paint stripper, and then I know there's the chemical-free strippers like the citrus strippers and stuff like that, but man, they take forever to work, okay? So, yeah, I just use the regular stripper that we have out here. Please read the tin and follow the instructions to the letter, okay? So you don't get caught out with it, all right? And follow the safety instructions. So proper safety PPE kit is required for that, okay? Not always. The only time I ever really use that is when I get one of those tragic stories where you get a piece of antique furniture that the family painted, and then you've got to get that repaired. Okay, if it's been varnished, no, I don't take anything. I just clean it up, rough the surface, and then just paint over it again. But if it's been painted with a paint, and particularly if it was for the daughter and it was done in pink, it's heartbreaking. They bring these pieces in, and I look at this and I think to myself, you know, you're sitting with about 120-year-old piece of furniture and you painted this pink. Well, okay, I'll make my money. All right. So that's the only time that you can use this, okay? So then, collection of brushes, toothbrushes, little nylon brushes, scrubbing brushes, and stuff like that. Nothing metal, because you've got to now work on the wood. Safe enough. The wood's okay with this product, okay? Wood doesn't fall apart, disintegrate, break apart, cry, whatever the case may be. The wood will hold out properly. So follow the instructions, read what's on the tin. It's a long process, especially when you have to wash the stripper off. Play it by ear. Sometimes you can take a high-powered hose and clean furniture down with it. I've done that. But please be careful of what you're doing, okay? Because high-powered hoses can hurt the wood. All right, so, yes, combination of things that you can do there, but be careful with this, okay? All right, then the other tool that's, yes, so definitely when you're doing furniture repairs, you need a rust remover because you get stuff that comes in. I mean, in the early years, they made it out of steel or whatever the case may be, and you need to clean it up, especially the old screws that they had, the flathead, with that little single slot in it. You want to make sure that you can get those cleaned up nicely and sorted out. So then, yeah, the rust remover. Stuff's going up in price quickly. A year ago, it was 99 Rand for a litre. I had a look again. It's now sitting at about 145 a litre. So I don't know what's inside. There must be petrol. I don't know. But it's water-based, okay? So water-based and it removes rust. Pretty good. It really works, okay? So something worth investing in. And the other thing is, once you've finished with it, you know, get a coffee filter. Put a coffee filter on a jar and just strain whatever's the gunk that's left behind. I mean, I bought 2 1 litres and the other one I haven't touched yet, and I've had it for a couple of years. But it'll give you an idea. This is a recent repair that I did. That's what the springs looked like on the rocking chair before, and then that's what they looked like after. Okay, so this stuff works, okay? Look, it's not going to make it 100%, but it's going to bring you pretty close to where you want to be, okay? So that you can, especially if it's metal pieces that you need to prime and then paint, it's certainly going to do the job. You want to get rid of the rust, okay? And this rust remover really does the trick. All right, then the next one that we're going to have a look at is steel wool. Okay, so the steel wool works quite well for you in a number of scenarios. For removing the paint stripper residue, so I wouldn't use my double nought. I'd use the cheap stuff that you can pick up to remove the paint, okay, off the furniture. You can use that steel wool. So for the guys that are doing even, you know, renovations or repairs or whatever at home, your skirting boards where you've realized that you've got Meranti skirting boards, you might even have oak, you might be lucky enough, or even yellow wood. If you use the paint stripper on that and then use a steel wool to then remove that paint and paint stripper, please wear gloves. It'll come off relatively easily, and then you'll be able to see what the heck's going on underneath. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Okay, instead of sitting there with the sander to try and sand that all off. Okay, so that would be the quickest and the most efficient way to get that paint off. All right, so you can also use it for with wax for a satin finish. So that's using the double knot. Can be used to remove paint or varnish on complex moldings without damaging the actual molding. Okay, so steel wool is like a sandpaper. It's just in a different shape. It's a lot more flexible, can pick up a shape quite easily. So then the OGs that I was talking about, where I said, yeah, I can cut the profile out. If you have a small section that you need to repair, don't put sandpaper anywhere near it. Then the steel wool option is the way to go, okay? Because that's like a sandpaper, but it's much more gentle on the finish, and you can just focus on that little patch and then just get it cleaned up, okay? Again, you may just want to keep gloves on your hands because the steel wool can get a bit rough on you, okay? All right, okay. Then some of the other things that you want in the shop is shellac. The shellac, you can use that to fix small scratches that you may have on a piece of furniture or finish. And you can also use it as a primer, and you can also use it to seal the end grain on whatever you're working with. So always remember now, if you've had a table and you've got end grain and you've got the top, whenever you put the varnish on, the end grain almost came out like a dark brown color, maybe 4 or 5 shades darker than what the actual top came out. So if you can put shellac down on the end grain first, when the shellac dries, it'll be the same match as what you've got on the top of the table. Because you can put, remember, if shellac goes down first, and you can put anything over the top of shellac. So you can put a polyurethane or an oil-based or solvent-based, or you can put a water-based over on top of shellac, okay? So that's why it says as a primer for other finishes, okay? So typically what I would do is on some of the work that I do, I'll put shellac down because it goes down very easily. And the other advantage is it dries up within less than 30 minutes. The shellac is dried. Then you can take it and then maybe take a bit of the steel wool and then just give it a rub to flatten it. Maybe put another coat on top of that. Or you can use a button. It's like a little cloth, and you put cotton wool inside it, douse it with shellac, tighten it up with a rubber band. It becomes like a button, and you can then, as you go along, you can squeeze it out and then deposit it on the piece of furniture. And that's sort of button polishing or French polishing. You're getting pretty close to the two scenarios, okay? So that's what you have. So always keep a small jar of dissolved shellac on hand, and I always have that in the shop. It's a proper go-to. I have at least, I mean, you can see that's a Nescafe jar, but my jar, so it depends. If I've got a big job, it'll obviously be full, and then I normally have it somewhere around here. And then people say it goes off in the shop. Well, if you haven't used your shellac for the last sort of kind of couple of months, just take a bit and put it on a piece of scrap wood that you've got in the shop. Just paint some on. If it stays tacky, then get rid of it, okay? If it dries up, then you're good to go. And I haven't had anything go tacky on me as yet. Okay, so touch wood. Alrighty. How are we doing there? Right, repair markers. Shall we grab a quick break? Okay, folks, all right, we're going to just have a quick break. 15 minutes ago, put the kettle on, make a cup of coffee. If you guys have got any questions from the interweb, please fire them away and let me answer them for you. But otherwise, the rest of the folks that are here, go grab a cup of coffee. I'll see you back in a few minutes. 15 minutes. Okay, so that'll be 11:15. Thanks. Happy to help you. Okay. Okay, my mate. Take care. Hello. Hello, Lungi. Okay. All right. Are we live? Can I ask you if you can just tip the camera a little bit up because my head's chopped off. No, just a bit more. Go a bit more. Yeah, there we go. All right, folks, are we back? All right, everybody, I hope you got your cup of tea and coffee and beer and whatever. Beer, biltong, and whiskey. All righty, folks, just before we start again, somehow it seems to have dropped. Okay, just before we start, one of our group members, Lungi, asked a question, how to get rid of a watermark, a white cup stain or watermark stain on a piece of furniture on the top. Okay, so the normal thing to do is just get some methylated spirits. What I would do first is just test the underside of that piece of furniture, just in case that the top happens to be shellac, because shellac is the solvent that we use to dissolve the shellac to make it liquid from the flakes. First, just test that it is that it doesn't melt, that the finish doesn't come off. If the finish doesn't come off, then it's obviously going to be a polyurethane or could be a water-based or whatever. Then you need to just wipe the spot with methylated spirits, okay? Because what's happened is the water's got trapped in underneath the finish, and you'd want to try and get that up. Please don't put a iron with a damp cloth. You're just going to cause further problems. It's just going to make the spot a little bit bigger. And then the other hocus pocus jiggery methods of mayonnaise with salt and pepper or whatever the case may be, none of that's going to work. Just use methylated spirits, but please test it first on the underside of the furniture to make sure that the finish is not shellac. Otherwise, it's going to strip the shellac off. Okay. Alrighty. Lungi, I hope that helps you. Okay. Good. Okay. Ready to go. All right, folks. You all had your coffee and everything, everybody? Alrighty. Okay, guys, let's have a look at the next slide. And that's the repair markers. So typically in a scenario like this, and it's a definite must-have, are the repair markers. And what they're going to do is they're going to help you fix up any nicks or scratches or whatever that you have on a piece of furniture. So especially when you have a dark finish and you've made a scratch or something. I don't know how clear you can see this, but on the package there's an image of a scratch. You can then just put the marker over that. Now there's different colored markers. Please go carefully. So do a light little spot first, a small little spot, and then progress through the different colored markers. So always go light and then go dark, not dark to light. Okay, try and remember that. But that's a definite must-have. I have those. Where did I find them? Gosh, if I remember, I think I got mine at the Chinese shops. Those big, like supermarket type things they've got. I got mine there. You'll see them from time to time. They'll be there 1 month, and the next month there's nothing, and then they'll be back again, and so on. So it's a case of just keeping an eye open for them. Okay. All right. Good. And then a definite one to have is a repair kit. And this is one that I have. It's a multicolor wood filler. I think it's about 12 sticks in there. And that's quite handy for fixing up some scratches, cracks, any discoloration of wooden furniture, table surface, cabinets, doors, and floors, and so on. Okay. So you've got the different colors that you can use to then match up and then do the repair. So you may have something that there was a splinter, and the person pulled it and got snagged maybe on a cloth or whatever, and they just carried on pulling it, and then the splinter came out. That'll be more than enough to put in and fill up that little patch, okay? And then you might need to put just a little bit of varnish over the top of it, let it dry off, and then you're good to go, okay? All right, so that's a nice handy bit of kit. All right, then a quick word about wood fillers. Okay, so you get wood fillers and you get wood fillers. Now, not trying to put anybody down. It's all a personal preference, but if you want to know what's the better option, Genchem have come out with what they call a wood buddy, okay? It's almost like an acrylic wood filler. It dries hard, It works well. If you happen to, once it's cured and you put a cloth over it that doesn't start disintegrating or whatever the case may be, like it does with the powdered or clay type wood fillers. These ones are almost like a chalk clay type scenario. It's the Brahma, and then the other one I think is the Alkaline brand. You get that as well. They come in all different colors, but folks, seriously, I think you know this. You probably got these little, excuse me, these tubs in your workshop. When you opened it up, it's bone dry on the inside. Well, there's a miracle cure for that. All you do is just put some water on top of it and then stick it in the microwave, take it out, and the stuff should be ready to go. It'll be soft again. Okay, so you can recycle it. But seriously, I'm going to invest in a microwave now. I'm not going to do that. I'd rather just use this stuff. This is pretty good. It comes in, I think, 4 shades. So if I remember pine, it was white. Then there's a light brown, medium brown, dark brown. And then, of course, you can mix the different ones between each other to try and get the shade that you want to work with. Now, another hint for you, if you're trying to get the shades of things correct, in other words, your finish or your fillers or whatever the case may be, a hint on how to do that is get yourself a small piece of clear glass. Make sure that the edges have been nicely cleaned, that they're not sharp or anything. Put that piece of glass over the piece of furniture that you want to repair and do your mixing on top of the glass, which is on top of that piece of furniture, so that when you look at it, your eye will then start getting the color contrast set up properly. And then once you've got the color match correct, you can then take it off the glass and then fill in that little hole or little gap. And you'll probably be as close as you need to be, okay? Always remember, though, when these products dry, they go a lighter color, and then when you put a varnish over it, the varnish darkens again. Okay, so kind of just keep in mind. But when you work with this, these are sort of semi-wet, so it's almost the color that you would have as a final result. Okay, so have a look at this. Get the smaller bottle. They come in different sizes. I think the smallest one is a 125 gram bottle. Get the smaller one, and please make sure you tighten it up properly. What I notice is that they don't seal properly. And then the stuff starts drying on the inside of the container. Because, I mean, it's not, you don't use this all the time. So it does tend to waste. Okay, whereas that you can have an opportunity to put some water in and stick it in the microwave and off you go. It's usable. But then again, remember that, once you wipe it with a cloth or something, then it will wipe away some of that. It's like a chalk. It'll wipe it away. Okay. All right. So that's just my comment. I use that rather than that. Okay. Okay, so now let's go and have a look at the repair that we want to perform, okay? So let's first of all assess the damage, okay? So we split the damage up into 2 categories. The one category is repairable and the other category is non-repairable, okay? So for the repairable side, you've got things like surface scratches and scuffs, because that you can repair. You've got wood scrapes and nicks. You've got chips and dents, cracks and gaps. Gosh, I wrote that down well, eh? Stain and surface marks, and then holes and knots, okay? So those are all repairable type damage that you can work with. The non-repairable types, pet urine and other pet accidents, okay? And then, so what are other pet accidents? Where the dog chewed the armchair apart. That's definitely an unrepairable. Well, it can be repaired, but not easily, okay? And then deforming and warping. And then, gosh, folks, and you must really keep an eye out for this. Not only just termites, but wood borer and all that kind of stuff. There's tons of it going on around. If I've had pieces of furniture come into my shop that had wood borer in it, and I've had to politely just put that into a bag, put the vacuum cleaner on that, and then seal it so that I can make sure that at least something will die if it is inside there. Okay. And the way to see if you do have termites, wood borer of any sort, is that if you see the holes, if there's any dust or powder around the holes, then they're live. They are inside there and they're busy attacking the furniture or whatever the case may be. Then get hold of a pest control and let them come and assist you with that. Okay, so now we've got the 2 categories of what we can work with. So the repairable is where obviously we will stay focused. All right, so the reasons for the repair, okay? So the damage might be minor. The furniture may be old and rare, or it has sentimental value for the owner, okay? So those are valid reasons why you would want to go and do the repair. But again, please use your judgment, okay? And don't be stubborn. You could easily be losing out if the repair takes far too long for you to do, okay? Remember, time is money. even if you retired and you're busy doing this as a little bit of a side hustle, time is money. If you've got a job that might take, a couple of days to do and you've charged them for a few hours, then please realize what you've landed yourself up in. Okay, Geordie's been kind enough just to show me there is a woodworm killer. Okay, I haven't read the tin, but that's what it looked. Oh, is it a newish one? Okay, so there we go. That's from Ruston's. So I think, like all things, they're pretty good to use. It says shake well before use and do not drink. Okay, I think that makes sense. Okay. You are not a worm. Okay, so, all right, folks, have a look at that. So it's the Ruston's woodworm killer. Okay, put that aside. I might just grab that. All right, reasons for the repair. Please don't outsell yourself with the repair job, okay? Make sure that you've gauged it and you've seen it. Sometimes it's very difficult. I mean, at the best of times when I go and I have a look at some furniture that I need to repair, the client doesn't always disclose what's going on, okay? And you take it at face value. This is what's wrong with the piece of furniture. You then take it back to the shop. You go and have a look at it, and you suddenly find out that the leg's fallen off, and it's now causing a major problem. Sorry, I went out of view there. And it's made a major problem. So please just be aware of what you letting yourself into, and go through the furniture piece carefully to make sure exactly what you need to repair is what's going to be repaired. Okay, all right. All right, wood furniture, the repair costs. So again, you'll assess the damage and determine what it will cost due to the repair, and you'll need to determine the material costs as well as your labor costs. So labor is normally measured by a rate per hour. So you work out what your cost is per hour, and then of course the materials that are going to go into play. And then you want to add a fairly good percentage to that, for the work that you're doing. That's your overheads and your machinery, equipment, and whatever. So your time will be the biggest cost component, as repairing can be quite time consuming. Initially, it is pretty much that. But once you start progressing and you get good at what you're doing, then things go a lot quicker and a lot faster. Then, it becomes a nice thing to do. I like it. I like doing a little bit of repair work in between the projects that I do. It's sort of a bit of a reset for me, because sometimes you get so involved and absorbed in your project. To fix up a chair, you can do that in under an hour. Take it apart, fix it up, and assemble it again under an hour, and it's standing there. So that's fairly quickly done. It also resets your mind and gives you a bit of a break from the big project. Okay, so consider that it may be cheaper to remake the item sometimes than actually repairing it. Okay, all right. So those are things that need to be looked at. All right, but again, depend on the factors. The sentimental value and the age of the item and so on. Okay, all right. Wood furniture repair step by step. Okay, so we're going to just have a look at the following. We're going to look at the scratch repair, scuff repair, stain repair, mark repair, and discoloration repair. Okay, we're just going to go through some of those. They're not all covered because it's just a lengthy topic, and there's so many variations of what repair work is there, or is out there. So we need to just mention a few of them and then just give you an idea of what you need to work with. Okay, so for the furniture repair and the ones listed on the top, the tools that you require for this task would be a microfiber cloth. So go and have a look at, the microfiber cloths are fairly cheap. You can buy kilograms worth for about 200 Rand, or take a lot now. So grab yourself a bag full of those, and then don't be frugal and keep on sticking to the washing machine. Once you've used them and they're dirty and they whatever, get rid of the things, okay? You need a wood repair kit, which would comprise of wood putty, colored repair compound or wax stick, brush, mixing jar, and a spatula, okay? And then a fine soft brush. Artist brushes are going to do quite well for you. And then paper towel or clean waste rag, okay? All right, so let's go and have a look and see what we can put together. Okay, so step one, you're going to clean and then wipe the area to be repaired. So generally speaking, you know what? Water, a mild solution of soap, dishwashing liquid, and a bit of soap in a very lightly damp cloth is going to be more than adequate for you to wipe down and clean the area. Don't put anything there like thinners and that the last thing you want to do on a furniture repair is wipe things down with turpentine, unless you're going to varnish the item, okay? Otherwise, you can use thinners, or you can make use of methylated spirits, or you can make use of acetone, okay, to wipe the furniture down. But first, test it to make sure that it's not going to dissolve, that any of the solvents that you use do not dissolve the finish, okay? So do it in an inconspicuous space, okay, or place. All right, so clean and wipe down the area to be repaired. Then mix, match, and create the grain patterns. Okay, so if you've got that piece of glass you're going to put that piece of glass over the top of it. You're going to mix up your putty or whatever you're going to be working with, and then you're going to fill up the particular hole. So apply the repair compound. Okay, so once you've done the mixing, then apply it into the damaged part. Allow the repair to dry. So you can see the repair is in this area here. And then that would probably be as far as you need to take it for the repair. And then maybe just put a little bit of finish over the top of it to then match the area, buff it, and then clean it up, polish that little spot, and you should be good to go, okay? So cleaning may restore the furniture. Okay, that's a bonus tip. Now, I've had cases where people have sent me furniture that's been loaded with crud, okay? And I've just washed the furniture down. That's all it needed was a good clean, and it was good to go back again, okay? So yes, if I did quote them for a repair or whatever the case may be, it's the way it is. Swings and roundabouts. One job you'll make money, and on another job you'll lose money. You might even hemorrhage, okay? All right, so I just want to show you, not so that you can be confident enough in terms of washing the furniture, okay? So there's a table that we acquired many years ago, okay? And this is what it actually looked like once we had cleaned it. Now, there's a product called trisodium phosphate, okay? I'm trying to think, the Americans call it TPS, I think it is. It's not sugar soap. For goodness sakes, do not use sugar soap. All right? I'm going to give you a good reason why. If you're working with some of the woods that we have in this country, in particular oak, if you wash it with sugar soap, it's going to turn the oak black. Okay? I'm not going to go into all the chemical details of it, but you've been warned. Do not wash it with sugar soap. So you want to try and get hold of trisodium phosphate. Go and have a look at the pharmacy. Ask the pharmacy. It comes in a powdered form. You may get it in some big crystals, or they may even do it in a finer powder. It's like caster sugar type constituency or consistency. You may want to have a look at that. So in this case, you can also use the sunlight liquid and a scrubbing brush, but don't flood what you're washing. Okay, so you want to kind of wet it, but you don't want to make it soaking wet. Okay, and then scrub. All right. To bleach the gray wood that you may have, use oxalic acid. Okay, so there's the oxalic acid. So what happens in that case, it bleaches the wood back to its natural color. Okay, what it was before. There is, look, this hocus pocus jiggery of bleaching wood, can you make my wood lighter? Folks, is a misnomer. It's like the alchemists of old trying to turn lead into gold. Okay, it's the same analogy. Try and avoid that kind of thing. I know some companies will sell you products that it looks like it's going to bleach them with the wood. If a wood is naturally dark, there's not much you can do to it. That's its color. You can't go and bleach it and make it lighter. What you can do, if you're really insistent on doing that, is sand the piece of furniture down and then get yourself a product like Rubio Monocoat with a clear, but maybe a 5% white pigment in it. And then you can put that on the wood, and that may lighten the wood to the shade that you want. So there are those type of options you can play around with. But to make the wood a natural white color, and I know some people out there are going to say there are products that are good for you. Because if there were such a product, I would have had that long ago and used it, okay? All right, be sure to read the instructions and warnings that come with any of these products. The trisodium is fairly safe to work with. And it'll do the job more than adequately for you. Okay, let me just show you what a before and after looks like with the trisodium. So this is what we did. We just separated the table down the one part, and there's the other part. That was before we washed it with the trisodium phosphate. That's what it looked like, that table. Put it down, scrubbed it, washed it down, and then that's what that patch looked like afterwards. Okay, so you can see the clear difference between the two. That's what just a simple wash is going to do for you. So trisodium phosphate, okay, please, not sugar soap, for goodness sake. I'm going to say that again. If you heard me say use sugar soap, you're a liar, okay? I never said that. So please, folks, be careful, because that will cause a disaster for you, okay? All right, rinse it down. The other thing is trisodium phosphate is an etcher. So what it does is it etches a material, whatever it washes. So if you do have a finish that you're going to, on a table, that's a little bit worn and you need to refinish it, you might not even have to sand. It will be sufficient enough just to wipe it down with trisodium phosphate. The trisodium will etch the top surface, in other words, key it, ready for the next layer to go on top. So once you've wiped it down, you'll clean all the rubbish off the top of it. So that's all oils and crud and whatever the case may be. It gets washed off, and then it's prepped the surface up for you. You might not even have to sand. You can just put the next layer of varnish straight over the top of it, okay? So it'll be that easy. But, okay, try it. Your eyes will get keener. There might be flake. If there's any flaking bits of varnish, you'll need to sand that off, okay? Maybe use a little bit of steel wool to clean that patch up, and then first put a very thin coat, maybe a 40%, 40% thinners, turpentine with 60% finish, and then just put it in so it can soak properly in and then settle. A little bit of steel wool again just to key it for the next layer. Put that next layer on, and then when you look at it again, you'll see it's now starting to blend nicely into the areas around you. Okay, so go steady, go slow, and then remember what you do. If you can't remember everything, there's a little thing called a notebook. Write it down and put it in there, or leave yourself a voice note, okay? Just remember where you put it, that's all. Okay, so that's the side-by-side of using trisodium phosphate, okay, on this tabletop, all right? Okay, so furniture repair. This time we'll have a look at a hole repair, crack repair, chip repair, and a dent repair, okay? Let's see how we can go about fixing this up, okay? All right, again, so what you'll need for this one is a microfiber cloth, a thin tip splinter tweezers. You should already have that in the shop because you're a woodworker. You're going to get splinters, so that tweezer should be there already. So a little bit of sandpaper, wood repair kit, wood putty, colored repair compound or wax, brush, mixing jar, spatula, paper towel, or clean waste rag. So those are general tools. Lay them out properly in front of you, and then you're ready to go. Good lighting, by the way. You also need good lighting. Again, prepare the surface by cleaning and removing any chips and splinters. So that little tweezers, you can get in and remove all the little loose pieces and stuff like that. And then take that sandpaper and then just buff and scuff the little area around it to get it nice and clean and ready for the next bit. Okay, use the putty to fill any gaps wider and deeper than 6 millimeter. Folks, don't do this in one step. It says so on the little thing of putty or tub or putty or whatever you're working with. It'll tell you. Not meant for gaps wider than 5 millimeters in most cases. If it is that, try and see if you can backfill that hole up a little bit, okay? And then put your putty over the top of it. But put a thin layer of putty and then wait for it to dry. Put another layer of putty, wait for it to dry. If you're in a hurry and you fill that up in one shot, and even if you leave a little mound, come back tomorrow, there's going to be a little dent in there again, okay? So, and you're still going to have to fix that up. There might even be a crack where it dried. There's made little cracks in it, and that's going to be a mess. Go steady. Do layer by layer by layer. Layers dry up quicker than a whole big lump that goes in there, okay? So that's going to take a bit of time. You can do that in between things that you're doing, okay? You can get quick fillers as well. You don't have to use the putties. You can get some quick fillers, and you can sort that out accordingly, okay? But chop around. All right. Mix your colors to match your wood again. Again, you may want to put a piece of glass down. Mix up your colors to match the wood. And then you start applying the repair compound. Looks very similar to the previous step that we did. Add the layers of repair compound as needed. So you've got these little tubs, and what works quite nicely is the pots that the ladies use for eye cream. Those little pots. So if you mix your putty up in that, and then when you finish, just close it, because that just keeps it really tight. And it's not a big space that holds a lot of air. So when you come back the following morning, you can open that up again, and you'll see that the putty is still moist and still ready to go, okay? So those little eye cream pots, they work the best. Keep the top lid, that little flat lid that goes in. You put that flat lid on, and then you put the lid on top of that. It works an absolute treat. So keep those. You can see there's a similar kind of thing. And then you keep those, and then you can fill up from that. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep on mixing and matching all the time. And eventually, it's not going to work out for you, okay? All right, so once you've done that, allow the layers to dry in between the application. It's somewhere around about here, okay? All right, so water and steam will also remove any dents and marks that you have, okay? So, again, what I would do is, depending on the job, so say, for example, I have to sand down a tabletop because it's pretty bashed and broken and worn and whatever, and the varnish has started coming off and the kids have scribbled all across it and whatever, so I have to give it a good sanding. Well, then I'll sand it, but you'll get to a point where there's divots or dents in the tabletop where the sander goes over the top of it and the finish is still stuck in those little valleys. You know what, if you've got yourself a nice little scraper or one of those little scrapers that we spoke about earlier on, you can use one of those and then scrape that varnish out there. Then what I would suggest is that you take your finger, put it in some water, and rub it across to see that the varnish has been removed. If the wood goes evenly dark, then you know it's gone. If it goes dark and there's light patches, it means the varnish hasn't been lifted up yet. You need to get back in there and clean that varnish up, okay? Once you've done that, then the next step is you have a choice. You can either just put water in and leave it there and then come back a little bit later, or if you want to speed the process up, you can take an iron and then put a damp cloth over the top of it. Please, this is not on a table that has been varnished already and you're trying to take out a dent on a varnished table. You're just going to fix that patch up. If you put that damp cloth down with an iron on top of it, you're going to have a watermark of note. Like I said, please don't do that. This is in the case of where you've got to varnish an entire tabletop. If you do have a small dent like that, then you need to treat it as a focused project. So fix that little area. I put a bit of water in just that little area. You may even want to take the iron, but with a dry cloth, with the water that you poured in there ready, so it goes damp, then put the cloth over the top of it and then press on that so that the steam can generate just in that zone and then decompress the fibers for you. It may work, it might not work. Okay, you need to do a judgment call. Either way, you can still fix the repair up. Okay, so water or steam will remove those dents for you. All right, okay, so to further, this is the other side of the coin, just some wood table restoration work that you can play out. So what we're showing over here is there's a bit of a gouge that's taken place on the table or a mark or something. And then afterwards, you can see the bit of the repair. So the guys have matched it up with filler, and they've probably used stains and coloring to fix that up. So you've got to be a little bit of an artist to fix that up. A couple of years ago, my daughter, I made some, making thinner boards, and I forgot I had a domino where I laminated one of the parts. And when I turned the boards over, I could see the domino joint, and there's this domino staring at me, and I was looking and I thought, you're kidding. How am I going to fix this up? And my daughter was with me in the shop at the time, and being the artistic one, she got her paint set and she painted the lines and everything. So, and it's a pity, I still have the piece in the shop. I kept it just to use it as an example to show people. I should really make a picture of it. But she matched that grain. It was on key art. She matched it perfectly that you could put the finish over and you wouldn't know that there was a domino sitting underneath it. So, you can do a little bit of magic, and that's typically how it's done. This is what you would play with. All right, okay. So I think those of us who have got pets are very familiar with this. Okay, that's still mild. Okay. What you're seeing there. I mean, there's a whole bunch of bite marks. So how do you fix that up? Well, I mean, give it a good sand. This area was particularly damaged. Now, look, it's very easy to just say to you, that was the before and that's the after. But what happened in between the process, okay? So, look, that you can see clearly the finish is different. So it was stripped back, okay, and then cleaned up. So for the most part, all these little pieces can be fixed and cleaned, okay, by a little bit of sanding. But what might happen is where this corner got particularly badly chewed up, you may want to cut that section down straight and then get a piece of wood and glue it straight onto that and clamp it. And then when it's dried, you take your saw or whatever, your flush cut saw that you're working with, cut it straight down that side, cut it straight down that side, then give it a bit of a sand, and you'll see that you'll probably be able to match that patch up pretty nicely. Then put your stain or whatever, your varnish and stain over it, and then that's the job fixed up. Okay, so there's a possibility of fixing that up, but you need to assess how bad is that damage. I mean, I've had chairs come in where there's probably, if that was, say for example, 40 by 40, there was probably about 10 by 10 of wood left over, and you've got to fix that up. You know what? That's a complete leg just about, okay? One of the things on chair repairs, I just want to add, if you're busy doing a chair repair, especially on the back, that's where the problem comes in. It's from the racking, from people leaning back and rocking on the chair. That's where it starts packing up, because you've got the seat and then the back. And so there's this movement going like this the whole time. So these two parts are going to come apart. But you'll always notice that the back is one solid piece that goes down to the bottom. So that's the leg, and then the back is one solid piece. And then you've heard the saying, if a horse breaks its leg, they shoot it, because there's just no way to repair it. So same as a chair, some of the very exotic repairers will not entertain fixing a broken chair leg. If you bring a broken chair leg to them, they'll just say, it's not worth the time and effort to fix it up. They'll say to you, no, throw it away, no matter what the age of the thing is. And then there's some guys that are dedicated, they'll say, you know what, I'll replace that whole complete back section. So the point to make is that there's no such thing as, even with the technology we've got today, you may get away with it. But to try and cut out bits and splice pieces in and stuff like that is not feasible. over time, how are you going to do that? You can put a dowel in there. You may get away with it, but a lot of the time the guys will put metal in there. And I've just explained to you a little bit earlier on what will happen with metal. It'll compress the wood fibers. It'll start loosening up, and over time, it'll eventually start loosening and then break. Okay, so generally speaking, once a chair is badly damaged on the legs, it's time to move it on. Unless it's a dedicated repairer that can turn around and say, I will fix it, but there's a price attached to it. So if you're really sentimental about that chair, think carefully of what you want to do. What's your next step, okay? So you'll find that a lot of the repairers, I've noticed this, will actually go around to the second-hand furniture shops that are selling old antiques furniture and stuff like that. And typically where there's a set of chairs, where maybe one got lost in a fire and there's only 3 left, then the value generally drops on that. They will pick these chairs up and just pack it into storage in the hope that one day somebody's going to come along with a chair like that and say, can you repair it? And they say, you're sure. And they just take that one out of storage and they throw the other one away. You get the idea. So and they'll give you the trade out on that. So some of these guys do these things because that's their profession. That's exactly what they play with. They've got masses of area with pieces of furniture that are standing there waiting for somebody to come in, for a repair, and they'll have something there for them. So, yeah, I'm definitely not that type of guy. I'll fix up what I can. If I can't fix it, I'll let you know, okay? All right. Wooden cabinet restoration. Okay, so this is a veneer on a piece of wood by the looks of it, and that's now all damaged. You can see what's happened there. The veneer's come off. So what's happened is these sections had to be cleaned up and cleared, and new pieces of veneer laid down to fill in those gaps, also with a filler and a putty. And then once that's all done, then a finish goes over the top of that, okay, to finish the job off. So those kind of things are also a possibility. So the veneer era has brought a lot of work into the shop, and I think a lot of work for repairing guys and restoration guys, because it's just never really looked after properly. This probably was facing outside, facing inside towards the sun, and may have been inside where there's a lot of humidity and moisture. And over time, it's now caused the veneer to delaminate. So we have these problems. It does come into play, okay? All right, so wood laminate restoration. You can see in this case, if you have a similar scenario with the laminate or the veneer breaking and chipping and cracking, whatever, probably something getting dragged across the floor. Well, these can be patched up. So this would typically be a putty that would have been put in there, and then that would have been painted and then varnished over. Okay, so it looks like the repair is now done properly and it looks nice and decent again, okay? So these things can be done. And certainly that'll work out a lot cheaper than, buying something completely new. All right, so this was a visit to my shop. This is how the furniture arrived. You can see the front. This was quite interesting. Was it the front legs? No. So it's again, the back legs. You can see, yes, the back. Look at the legs of one long length, so making up the back and then the back leg. And then you can see all the mortars and tenons are broken out of this. So it's a school teacher that teaches kids after class for extra lessons. So you can see it straight away. The kids are riding that chair like a horse, okay? It's going to go. The backs are going to go. But what is also interesting is, whilst you're not going to see it here, the fronts also went. You can see there's the front parts that broke out there. Some of the front legs were also loose on the rail and stile and the legs. So I'm going to just show you what it looked like. So I had to deconstruct that chair into 2 piles of wood. Okay, that's exactly what I spoke about. So there's the mortars and tenons. So I try to recover them. You can see most of them have got their mortars and tenons. There's 1 or 2 where I actually had to cut the tenon off completely, and then I just used dominoes to fix that up. Backfill them, and then just use dominoes to fix it all up. But in any case, I was pretty successful to get this whole thing reconstructed. There's the A and there's the B. Oh, guys, please, if you have a look at, if you can kind of, I don't know if you can zoom in on this, but if you can have a look, you'll see these little pieces of tape that I've put all over the place just to make sure that I've matched the parts up. So please, that also needs to be done before you start disassembling, okay? And then once that was all completed, I then reassembled, and there we go. Now, in particular, what was strange in these 2 chairs is that on the front, on this area, on both of them, the mortars and tenons were not loose at all. But what is odd is that on the opposite side here, both those chairs, the mortars and tenons were loose, and I had to repair those. And I'm still a little bit puzzled by it, and I'm thinking, is it maybe the way they were sitting at the table? Maybe they were sitting sideways or ajar to the table. I don't know what or how. But it's just so strange that the backs were broken, and then the front right-hand side, as we were looking at it, was broken. But anyway, I did the repairs. And again, if you look very carefully, you'll see that there's doweling that I've pushed through the mortise and into the tenon. So where the tenon is, and it goes into the mortise, I then put a dowel through, 2 dowels through, and then put that under clamping and then locked it in. Okay, so that should hopefully hold for a while. It's not going to hold forever. If these kids keep on, riding those chairs like a horse, they will come apart again at some point. Okay, but for the rest of it, I must say the chairs were sound. There was no cracks on the legs or anything like that, so they were all good. Anyway, so there's a pile of wood turned back into a chair. All right. Okay, then this one came into the shop. The lady wasn't happy with the finish that was on there, so I had to scrape that all off. The easiest way to do that was with card scrapers. Okay. Well, there's no sander put on that. I just put card scrapers on it. The history behind this furniture, it was a project that a guy made. He built the furniture for his house way back in about the 1930s. And the lady who's got it was her dad. He bought it from this guy. He just loved this furniture. And he bought it from the guy there and then. So she can still remember them loading it up into the back of the car and onto the roof. And then the dad brought it home. And the first thing he did, because the seats were very high, he cut the legs down, so he shortened them. So one of the things is, as you get older, it's more difficult to sit down on a low chair, let alone get up. So I have the opposite coming back. People want me to make something to raise the chairs now. So in any case, she's getting to that. That's the dawn for her. But in any case, what I did was, I just want to let you know what happened here. So this was originally sealed with boiled linseed oil, which is definitely not my favorite by no means. I don't know. I just do not like this stuff. Anyway, it was done with that. It soaked properly into the wood. So what I had to do is, she wanted the chairs to be done in a hard wax oil. Okay. So I scraped it, but then what I discovered is that the oil was sort of seeped in. And when I put the hard wax oil on top, it wasn't adhering. The hard wax oil was just sitting on the top and it wasn't curing either. And it became sticky, so I had to wipe that off. So I didn't do the whole thing. I just did one arm. So I had to wipe the whole thing off. And then what I did was I just had a good look around to see what there was. And then, funny enough, the the yellow Woodok furniture oil that you get, the yellow bottle, I took that and I put that on, and that was the outcome. That's how it came out. So didn't come out too bad, I must say. Okay, so it's a fairly straightforward chair, and the card scrapers worked perfectly, because if you have a look at these back sections, they're flat. So you could get the card scraper in and then scrape those pieces out to get all the old boiled linseed oil that cured, get it off. Now, one thing I didn't do is I didn't touch the seat. There was no need to, because who's looking at that? Okay, but when I did put the furniture oil on, you can see how it blended. These are 2 separate chairs, but they were pretty much the same. You can see, where I had cleaned up and sanded and fixed and whatever, it was easy enough just to put that furniture oil on. And then the following morning, wherever the furniture oil was sitting and it was still wet, it was a case of just wiping it and rubbing it off, because it was sitting on top of the boiled linseed oil. So I just had to wipe that down. But otherwise, for the rest of it, you can see how well it went in. And there was no residue or anything left behind, because it was nicely cleaned down. She was extremely happy with it. So there we go. So that's an example of how you can work a little bit differently in terms of getting things up. But I had to do everything. Thankfully, everything was square and straight. The guy who did this wasn't a master craftsman. He was just a regular Joe in his workshop, and he put all these pieces together. They were all flat. All the pieces are flat. They were easy to sand and easy to work with. Okay, so that was a nice job. Okay, thank goodness. There was also a bench, a 3-seater bench that came with this lot as well. So just as easy to work with. Okay. All right. Then I just want to show you. So this kist came into me for repair. A walnut kist. Can you believe it? Came up from the Cape. Incredible. There was actually dovetails put into it for joinery. I can't. Okay, so obviously not on the back side, but on the side, there's dovetails inside there. So this, apparently, it was a cabinet maker. There were a couple of them in the Cape, and when the guys were coming up to the Transvaal in those days, to the Boer republics, because the British had just taken over the Cape between all the wars and the fighting that was going on from the Dutch. They'd just taken over the Cape, so a lot of the people in the Cape wanted to come up to the Boer republic. So the Transvaal was one of them. So the carpenters down there would make furniture, but they would hammer and cobble this stuff together in rapid succession. So this thing is full of nails. I mean, if you look at it, you can see the nails all the way along here. But interesting, what happened here is this is, when you look at this over here, this is not wood perishing or wood damage as for example, water or whatever the case may be. It stems from this leg. So this leg's got a little square socket that goes into that hole. And from the movement and the racking, it's now broken the wood over a period of time and caused these pieces to shear out and break out. But in any case, I fixed it up, and I want to show you another section here. If you have a look at this wooden leg, there's a piece that broke off there, and on the back there's a piece broken off, because when I did the repair, I fixed this whole repair up, made the square, and put it back, and you can see there I've attached pieces back on again, and then I used my shinto, believe it or not, to actually file it into that pattern to get it, or shape, to get it back again, and then sanded it. So that breakout there is sitting on that end there, and I fixed that up. And then also another thing you'll notice is, can you see there's a chip that broke off on the walnut here? And there you can see that chip is fixed up. Can you see that? So what was happened there is I cut it down, put a piece of wood back on top of that, cut it square once it had dried, and fixed it up, because it's going to get stained anyway. So I just looked for something that would more or less closely match it. The other thing I want to point out to you is, you're probably saying, but why did I have to make such an extensive repair? Why did I not just fix that repair up there? And I actually cut out a whole section. Well, let me show you a little bit more detail. So what had happened is, the cracks and everything had gone all the way right up to, you can still see there's a crack. So a whole lot of cracks had come up from the back. So I cut that whole section out to replace it with a new piece, so it looks like that. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is, there's nothing else to reinforce that piece of wood, and I want you to listen to this carefully. You've got to look at the repair that you're doing. In this case, there's a piece of wood there and a piece of wood there, so that piece can rest quite easily. Remember, this is the base. The leg's going to come up on it. It'll rest quite easily on that, so there's no problem there. This side over here, when that piece of wood goes in there, it's long grain to long grain that you're going to be gluing. It's like a tabletop. So that will laminate quite straightforward, as long as you clamp it properly. I mean, there was enough for me to clamp across there to clamp that up. So this piece over here, I'll put a bit of glue. You know, a little bit's going to do something, not do something. If anything, it's going to stop maybe water or insects or something from coming up into the drawer underneath here. But I mean, you've got that side, and you can laminate that piece on. So there's your piece fixed. I mean, that's not attached to that. That side's not there, but that's glued. And it's 100% solid. And then made that little square socket for it to then put the leg in. By the way, there you can see the shinto. So you can see it's something that I'm going to work with on a regular basis. So once that was repaired, then the leg was added back on. Okay, so that was the job done. Oh, let me just go back one over here again. There we go. So there you can see the little tear out on that piece of walnut. And now you can see the repair perhaps a little bit clearer now. Okay. I don't have any pictures of, I just put a walnut stain around it, around the whole complete box, because you can see again, and I think this is also linseed oil that went on here again, but the whole box has been done, and I just never had a finished picture for the job. I was just more of these things that I was concentrating on. But there we go, so you can get the idea. By the way, have a look and see how they do a repair. You know, I mean, the other two boards were going loose. They wouldn't even laminate it. They just put a piece of board across and put two nails to keep the boards together. It's underneath. Who's going underneath there to look at it? You know, this is how people worked in those days. They pretty much do that today as well. If you don't see it, they're not going to spend time on it. Well, I just want to show you a table repair. I get a lot of table repairs. Table repairs and downsizing of tables is a big thing at the moment. I get at least 2 of these a month. So this is interesting. Guy asked his gardener, can you fix the table for me and revarnish it? And he said, yeah, sure. He said, okay, good. All right. What do you need? The guy said, no, I just need a scraper. Well, you used the scraper effectively. You can see how it's done a stunning job. Okay. So I got the table and I had to fix that up. So I sanded the table and then I put the finish on, and this is what the table looks like. So that's the before and that's definitely the after. Okay. All right. So these things are doable. There was a little boo-boo on this one. As it is in my shop, I was running down that side. The bearing I had I was just fixing up the round over just to tidy it up, because it's a quick way. By the way, it's a good hint for you. If you got a round over on a tabletop and there's varnish in that's been packed up there over years, just take the same matching round over. It might be a 1/4 inch round over. Just run it around the side. It'll clear all the varnish off for you. It might be a little bits left over. You can just take a little bit of sandpaper, scratch it, and then you can paint over the balance of it. Okay, so I ran the router down that end, and I can't even see it from here, but somewhere around here, the bearing came off. Okay, so the little nut loosened, the bearing came off, and I dipped into the side. So I had a little knot that I had to manufacture. I had to fill it up and fix it up, but it looked perfect. I don't know. I don't think I added a picture in on that, but anyway, okay. All right. So that's the journey through wood restoration. So there's a lot of things to consider. And I've only just kind of covered the surface in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. I left out a lot of things in terms of the finishing because, I mean, if you make a new furniture piece and you need to finish it, then you know how to work with finish. I didn't want to go through the details of that, but I wanted to go and cover more the things that were relevant to the actual repairs that need to be done, especially the tools. And I think that's what trips a lot of people up. One of the good books that you want to try and get hold of is this one here, The Complete Guide to Repairing and Restoring Furniture, amongst many books that are out there. But this is probably one of the better books. It's from by William Cook. So if you can have a look for that, it certainly makes for a good read with a lot of good techniques and things and ideas and tools and whatever. So, and then approaches on terms of how to go and do the repair work. And the approach is, like I've given it to you, focus on the repair. Don't do the whole table to fix up a small scratch, okay? Focus on that repair. That's where the art is, focusing on that particular part. Then some other things worth watching is Tom Johnson from Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration. Very good. But the guy that I really like is Scott Bennett from Fixing Furniture. Scott's got a nice approach. He's a good educator, and it's his living. It's his job. This is what Scott does. So these guys are on YouTube, so please go and have a look at it. Scott, I would highly recommend. His videos are particularly long. They're about an hour long. Okay, so you want to, if he's going to do a table repair or a chair repair or whatever the case may be, it's worth sitting down and then just sitting it through and watching what he does and how he does and how he puts it together, okay? He's very good. He's really smart in terms of what he does, and it's somebody that I would highly recommend, okay? Otherwise, that book, but there's many books out there, but that's a very good start if you can get your hands on it, okay? All right, so finally, after all of that, there's a question I ask you. So what would you do? So that's a tabletop that's got a frame, and then the top is inside there. The top's now obviously curled or whatever the case may be, and warped and whatever. The question is, what would you do? Oh, look, there's nothing worth recovering there. Yeah. I don't even know. I'm looking at the frame. It's not even a sophisticated styled frame or whatever the case may be. Nothing fancy there. You know what? Build a new piece of furniture. All right. Because that's what it's going to amount to. I mean, the frame concept is not helping at all. It could be framed on this side, and that could be stopping the wood movement, and that's why it's, gone loose from warping and stuff like that. So, or cupping and whatever the case may be. No, that's just one little view. In my case, I would just say no. Either new top on that. Maybe keep the legs if the legs are that important to you and you're sentimental about the whole thing. But get a new top put on top there, okay, and a proper decent top. That would be worth it. All right. Okay, gosh. Any questions? Peter, Gary, Peter, Inga, TV land, video land, social world land. Any questions? No questions. Okay, good. All right, folks. Well, then that's my side of the story. All right, good. Okay, and that's it. If you want to get hold of me, that's where I am. All righty. Yeah, no, sure. But the name of the game is you've got to be patient for this. Practice makes perfect. Trust me, it really does. The more you do, the better you get at it. The quicker you work. The more efficient you become. So when you do get something that lands in the shop, it's not something you're going to say, oh gosh, it's going to take me weeks to do. It's going to take you a couple of hours and it's out of the way. Okay, so then it's really worth it. Say again? Okay. Yeah, all right. All right, folks. All right, Gary. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, but you know what? There's always a new thing that comes out, eh? New little trick you're going to learn. I've had so many things thrown at me. Gosh, and as you go along, I mean, I had a guy from Pretoria who got hold of me and asked me to repair one of the early fold-out tables that they had, and It was the style. It's actually, a company must have made them, because I've seen the style twice, and there's a third time I'm seeing it now. A guy's just asked me to come and have a look at the table for him, so I recognized it straight away. But it's a fold-out table, fairly big. But what had happened is it had wheels, solid oak. So it's got these solid oak legs with these beads and turnips and whatever you want in the leg. It's a beautiful looking table. But the bottom of the table's got these little cups with wheels on it. Okay? So that's not the problem. The problem was that the little sausage dogs were pissing against the legs, and the pee was going into the cups. So over the years, that acid had really chomped away that oak. So I had to take the whole section off and then replicate what would look suitable for the bottom of the leg. So then again, knowing how leg styles work wasn't a difficult thing to do, because all I did was I just took the last sort of turnip, if you want to call it that, and then you have turnips, you have flats, you have coves, you have beading, and then you have another shape. So that's where the cup came. So I cut the cups off, and then I made where the turnip is, followed the square, put the beading on the outside of the square with another turnip on the foot at the bottom. So the whole thing looks like it was part of the original design. And then coincidentally, it matched what was going on at the top of the table. So that worked out. Put the whole thing together. I said to the guy, leave it in my hands, I'll sort it out for you. And then when I took it back to him, and he had a look at it, and I put the thing out and whatever, he came back and he just said, well, you just looked, he said, I can't believe it. It actually looks better than with the wheels on. So this client I'm going to see wants the wheels removed as well. So now it's an easy task just to, so pay school fees on the first one and then make money on the second one or the third one. Okay, so that's how it'll work. All right. But yeah, and design is a big factor. So leg design, you've got to go and have a look at, there's tons of information on it. Learn your terminology on the legs. So when you're talking to a guy who's got to turn them for you, can talk the same language. I need these beads. I need these coves. I need these grooves. I need whatever the case may be. Okay. So you know what you're talking about. Okay. And everybody's on the same page. The turners out there are good. They're familiar. They know how to work with these things, especially the older guys. They know exactly what to do, and they'll guide you as well. Okay. Alrighty. But otherwise, there we go. No more questions? Nobody? All right. Good. Okay. Well, everybody. Okay, good. All right, folks. Well, then that's it from my side. I hope it was a good session. You guys all enjoyed and got something.